Welcome, listeners, new and regular, to the Sona PC podcast with Rob Adamus. As always, I am your host, Rob Adamus. Whether you're listening to the show on my YouTube channel or website, www.sonapcpodcast.com, I thank you so much for tuning in and taking some time out of your day with me. Well, happy to say my instincts were proven right. When I initiated writing my last podcast about Justin Trudeau, Canada's Prime Minister, I felt it would ignite a firestorm of emotions and be the most listened to, viewed episode yet, and it was. So it was an easy decision as to what the next podcast should be about. Trudeau 2.0. This individual, this narcissistic, pandering, virtue signaling, Canada-hating individual ignites such loathing and division in Canada, more than anyone in Canada's history. All brought on by him through his daily destructive words and actions against Canadians. I now see people who used to be the most laid-back, nonchalant folks absolutely in a fit of rage by Trudeau and the Liberal Party's absolute disdain for the great citizens of Canada. Panders to Islamic and ISIS terrorists, illegal immigrants, and certain special interest groups, all in accordance to the instructions by the Liberal Party's master puppeteers, the globalists like the Rothschild and Rockefeller families, through the oversight of their middleman, the devil-worshipping, Nazi collaborating George Soros, who has his hand in every destructive globalist pie around the world. Now, rather than go over again as to who George Soros is and what and who he represents, please listen in to my previous podcast, as Soros is a main target of the show. And I say target because Soros is the face of evil. And he's advising Trudeau on how to tear Canada apart and turn the country into an Islamic, Sharia law, welfare state. It's not a joke, people. My show is simply a platform in providing truthful information to the masses, and you're listening to only the truth. As someone who researches, verifies, and reports this information, I don't go into any subject with a slanted bias. That's not journalistic integrity. Unlike the CBC, CTV, CNN, NBC, etc., mainstream media, who seem to have a complete aversion to journalistic integrity by doing nothing but lie and spew propaganda every day since they came into existence because of who they're funded by, which happens to be only 6 families / corporations under the following titles: Time Warner, Disney, Viacom, CBS Corporation, NBC Universal, and News Corporation. Yes, I think you've heard some of, if not all, these names. Okay, on to Trudeau 2.0. I outlined about 24 lies, scandals, debacles Trudeau and the leftard party have perpetrated, primarily on Canadian citizens, yet overflowed to other countries and their leaders as well in the previous podcasts. I think it's appropriate for me now to add further treasonous activities he and his party have on their resume. All right, starting with recently called a Quebec senior lady a racist for simply asking the question, when are you going to pay back the $146 million to Quebecers you took from us to pay for illegal immigrants? Then Trudeau had undercover RCMP assault this lady a number of times prior to showing their badges, which happened to be in their pockets. They never showed it to her before assaulting her. Explain to me how this lady is a racist for asking a normal question. Then, a few days ago, Trudeau attends a disabled gay veterans get-together. No issues there, right? But then simultaneously had a disabled veteran fondle his testicles for 10 minutes while fondling the veteran's testicles simultaneously. Okay, then Trudeau proceeds to say, any man who does not allow another man to fondle his testicles is a homophobe. Whoa, there's a racist remark. Okay, don't believe what you just heard? 100% true, and pictures all over social media to prove it. This is Canada's so-called leader. Oh, boy. More important, apparently, to have one's testicles fondled rather than concentrate on matters much more important to Canada, maybe like NAFTA negotiations, for example, where Christina Freeland, Trudeau's Minister of Foreign Affairs and a George Soros stooge, initiated NAFTA talks, putting on full display her exceptionally low IQ by not concentrating on putting a deal together with the US and Mexico, but by calling President Trump names instead. How pathetic. Flippin' globalist puppet. Another action where the Liberal Party proves they don't care about Canadians, but the globalist agenda, where Soros and other elitists are giving them instructions to carry out. Now, Trump is the globalist main target because he's not a politician. Thank God for this. He's an outsider, not part of the establishment as it's called. A man who actually cares about the citizens of the U.S. first in all decisions. Unlike Trudeau and the Liberals who show their hate towards Canadians daily and don't make one decision on behalf of the Canadian citizens. Then, the mainstream media in the U.S. and Canada, which, of course, I outlined earlier, show a 92% negative story rate towards Trump. More lies and propaganda, and unfortunately too many people, especially in Canada, buy into these lies and propaganda about President Trump. Those citizens in the U.S. and Canada who, thank God, are awake to the globalist agenda will take Trump over Trudeau today and forever as their desired type of leader for Canada. Trump was, and whether people want to believe me or not, and again, you have free will to make any decision you want, right or wrong, was divinely placed by God into the U.S. president position, as there is no other way this could have happened, considering George Soros spent $1 billion backing Hillary Clinton. Yes, I said Hillary, not Hillary. As evidence shows, at least 141 murders / so-called suicides to people who were within the Clintons' inner circle dating back to their early political days in Arkansas. And Soros rigged not only Clinton's campaign, but also made sure she won the Democratic nomination over Bernie Sanders. Hey, here I say again, do your own research, okay? I'm just providing truthful information, and truth is truth, whether you like it or not. So, as much as the leftards, as I call the liberals and Democrats and social justice warriors and anyone who hates truth, I mean, it's called leftist derangement syndrome, okay? That's the terminology. Now, moving on, Trudeau's best friend, former roommate, Christopher Ingvelson, convicted of child pornography. And Trudeau's close friend, Ben Levin, former University of Toronto professor, convicted pedophile. You see the trend here? I brought this up on the last episode too. Okay? And Trudeau tweets on Twitter, "Hey, if you're not allowed to legally enter the U.S., we welcome you to Canada." No, we don't. And on comes the onslaught of not refugees, but illegal immigrants across the Quebec border in complete violation of the Canada-U.S. Safe Third Country Agreement, courtesy of the weird sock-wearing, can't finish a sentence without stumbling over 10 words, Prime Minister. Next, he enacts a values test for the Summer Jobs Grants Program and subsequently turns down Christian and faith-based programs and camps, but then turns around and gives grant money to Muslim and Islamic organizations with ties to terrorist groups. Does this sound normal? Does it sound right? Justin Trudeau has no problem violating Canada's Charter of Rights and Freedoms. In this case, the freedom of religion, conscience, and belief, which are just a few of the Charter of Rights being violated through his attestation test. Next, he has a lot of foreign-born cabinet ministers with ties to Islamic Muslim terrorist groups, like the Muslim Brotherhood, for example. Ahmed Hassan, the immigration minister, you know that guy? Never has a smile on his face. Omar Al-Ghabra and Iqra Khalid, 3 such cabinet ministers. How does this happen? Well, unless the 2015 election was rigged by George Soros and his offshore hate funding organization like the Tides and Lead Now foundations, which are just 2 of 200 plus front organizations he uses to fund terrorism and the globalist agenda, look into it. It's out there. And in February, Trudeau completely bungled a visit to India, promptly costing Canadian taxpayers $1.5 million in just 8 days. And to make matters even worse, a Liberal MP invited a convicted terrorist to that event in India and enraged the entire Indian government. Well, they should be enraged. Oh, think that's the end of the story? Not a chance. Let's add further Trudeau fuel to the India visit fire. Trudeau trotted out one of his most senior members of the civil service and publicly placed blame for his and his party's incompetence and subsequent threat to Indian national security by inviting this convicted terrorist onto the Indian government, stating, "They set me up to look like a fool." No, you degenerate. No one needs to set you up to look like a fool. You do a spectacular job on your own of this every day. Seriously, my listeners, if you haven't had enough of this excuse for, Lord, I want to use a more expletive type of word in describing him that I'm going to allow myself to do here. So I'll just call it this excuse for a human. What will it take? By the way, now the talk is that Trudeau and the Liberal Party are now moving towards resurrecting the War Measures Act. Now, let me explain what this means to Canadians, and it's bad. Very bad. At the beginning of the First World War, the Canadian government quickly passed the War Measures Act, a law that gave sweeping emergency powers to the federal cabinet. The act was enforced from August 4th, 1914 to January 10th, 1920, the official date of the end of the war with Germany. Now, the act allowed cabinet to bypass the House of Commons and the Senate and to govern by what's called order in council. It's a decree. When it perceived the existence of, quote, war, invasion, or insurrection, real or apprehended. Now, the act gave the government full authority during wartime to censor and suppress communications, to arrest, detain, and deport people without charges or trials, to control transportation, trade, and manufacturing, and to seize private property. As a result, the act was used to ban 253 publications, including 222 American, 164 foreign language, and 89 leftist publications. Now, following the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia in 1917, socialist, which is the same as fascist, which is the same as communist, reading materials in particular were targeted for censure, and membership in left-leaning or pacifist organizations it was forbidden. As well, people were arrested and interned for their political beliefs. Now, if I just spoke too fast to have you understand the underlying goal for Trudeau, the Liberal Party, and the globalist agenda, then please, I implore you, please rewind the soundtrack back to what I just stated until it hits home. The point of what I just stated is the globalists and Trudeau and the Liberal Party want to enslave Canada. Okay? 37 million Canadians will no longer have a voice, no rights, no opportunity to fight tyranny, will be in gulags. What's a gulag? It's a system of labor camps or political labor camps maintained in the Soviet Union under Joseph Stalin between 1930 and 1955, in which many. Now, although accurate records are not really readily available, a safe estimate shows between 20 and 30 million people died in these gulags. Same will happen here. We're being overthrown by a throw-it-back-in-your-face scenario by Trudeau, and Canada will soon no longer exist as a democracy, but ruled by communism, Sharia law. In other words, socialism, fascism, all left-wing radical ideologies, and this has been the end goal of the globalist agenda. And it's being administered daily by their puppets, Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party. Now, if the NDP were in power, they'd be administering this overthrow just the same way that the Liberals are doing. Now, hear me on this. The only option, again, the only option out of this evil plan is to get rid of Trudeau and the Liberal Party as quickly as we possibly can and vote for the Conservative Party. Okay, it's the only way out. I'm not saying there's a perfect solution here, but the Conservative Party is by far a much better option in running this country. They're not here to enslave us. They're here to work with us and look after Canadians first. Okay? Now, part of this plan, Trudeau's trying to de-weaponize us. Now, Canada already has some of the strictest gun laws in the world, but completely de-weaponizing citizens, always, hear this again, always has led to the deaths of large percentages of a country's population in a short period of time because people were no longer able to defend themselves against a tyrannical government. Look at Venezuela. Massive amount of resources where the citizens enjoyed a lifestyle much better than what they have now. Want to know what's happening there? Citizens are fighting to find food in garbage bins anywhere they can, and they're battling animals for scraps of food and water because people no longer have money. There's no longer food and drink supplies in grocery stores because there is none. Venezuela is now a socialist, fascist, communist hole. And it literally happened overnight as soon as they ended up with a leader that went right to socialism, communism. Canada, unfortunately, is well on its way to becoming the Venezuela of North America. And if you think this sounds like I'm joking or I'm out of my mind, you'd better wake up pronto. I question everything, study everything, and draw my own conclusions. Remember, the only reason I started this podcast is because I woke up and realized how mainstream media does nothing but lie and spread their propaganda as part of that agenda. And I'm not going to sit back and do nothing against the tyrannical nature of Trudeau and the Liberal Party, like the vast majority of people in any given country seem to do. This is a battle of good versus evil. I've said it before, and I'll keep saying it till everyone gets it. Get off your butts and take action against Trudeau and his party. It's not hard. He's a person, as is anyone in his terrorist-loving cabinet, and people can be beaten. Good does beat evil. Do you understand this? 37 million Canadians have a collective power you can't even begin to imagine. And once you begin taking action, others do as well. And that synergy, which comes from a soulful place, creates an energy and force beyond your wildest dreams. And in this case, it brings Canada to a much better place of love, prosperity, peace, all the good things, because our end goal is the same. We can bring Canada to a place where it's a shining example to the rest of the world and the defeated globalists of how humankind was meant to interact with one another. As caring neighbors, we're all prosper in all ways in all things. Doesn't this sound better to you? Take action against tyranny, and we win. I know that I have no choice but to continue with a Trudeau 3.0, 4.0, as many .0s as it's going to take to spread the word across Canada. Certainly the U.S. is our closest ally, yet around the world as well, and waking people up to reality. Stop watching mainstream media, TV, and radio. Tune into alternative news on the internet and radio. There's lots out there. Okay? You all have an obligation as Canadian citizens to not only love your country, but protect your country. And if you don't, the inevitable outcome is the result. Canada loses to evil, and your life as you now know it will become a living hell. I will continue taking action. Pray you do the same with we patriots who are doing so daily. We have the power, the intelligence, we have God on our side. Nothing can defeat us if we are aligned. I put my faith in all of you. Now, as much as the information I provided paints a bit of a bleak picture here, here's the upside. We can create a beautiful outcome. It's within our abilities to ensure a positive end result. So until next week, be safe, be learned, be sound in mind, body, and spirit. Communicate with other like-minded and like-hearted people. Spread the podcast virally to your connections around the world. I'm so humbled you spent time with me today and listening to truth. God bless, and good night.